You wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, the phone lights up. 3 notifications. A like. A meme someone forwarded. A vague good morning text from someone you haven't seen in person in 6 months. And already, before you've even stood up, you feel it. That quiet ache. Not loneliness exactly. Something worse. The feeling of being surrounded by people and still being alone. You have hundreds of contacts. Dozens of group chats. A calendar full of plans. And no one you'd call at 3 in the morning if everything fell apart. And you've started to wonder if that's just how adulthood works. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Most people don't have real friends. They have arrangements. They have transactions dressed up as affection. They have people they exchange energy with, favors with, entertainment with. And when the exchange stops, the bond dissolves like it was never there. Because it was never there. The costly mistake most people make is this. They think friendship is something that happens to you. Something you stumble into. Something you find. But real friendship isn't found. It's built. And you can't build it until you stop needing people to fill your emptiness. That's the idea I want to sit with you in today. Real friendship is something you construct through deliberate choice, through solitude, through the willingness to be honest when honesty costs you something. And almost no one is willing to pay that cost. Let me explain what I mean. Think about your friendships right now. Not the idealized version. The real ones. The ones you actually have. How many of those relationships would survive if you stopped initiating? If you stopped texting first, stopped making the plans, stopped checking in? How many would simply go quiet? Be honest. You already know the answer. And it's not a small number. Here's what nobody tells you. Most of the bonds you call friendship are held together by proximity and convenience. You're friends with the people at work because you're in the same building 5 days a week. You're friends with certain people because your kids go to the same school. You're friends with someone because you used to live in the same neighborhood or because you were assigned to the same project. Remove the shared circumstance and what's left? Usually nothing. Usually a slow fade that neither of you even acknowledges because neither of you ever really chose the other in the first place. You were just there. And being there is not the same as being chosen. Seneca understood this 2,000 years ago. He watched the same pattern in Rome. People surrounding themselves with flatterers, with drinking companions, with business associates, and calling all of it friendship. And he drew a line that most people still refuse to draw. He said a real friend is another self. Not a contact. Not a buddy. Not someone who makes you feel good. Another self. A person who reflects your values back at you, who sharpens you, who tells you what you need to hear even when it stings. Someone whose presence in your life makes you more of who you want to be, not less. That's a high bar. And it should be. Because here's what's actually happening in most people's lives. They're not maintaining friendships. They're maintaining appearances. They're collecting people the way you'd collect features on a social media profile. Not for depth. For display. So that when someone scrolls through your life, it looks full. It looks connected. It looks like you belong somewhere. But you know the truth. You feel it at night when the noise dies down. You still don't feel whole. You still don't feel like you belong to anyone. And the reason is simple. You've been investing in breadth when you should have been investing in depth. You've been spreading yourself across 50 shallow connections instead of pouring yourself into 3 or 4 real ones. And shallow connections cannot hold the weight of a real life. They break. They always break. Let me go deeper. There's a test for friendship that the Stoics used, and it's uncomfortable. The test is this. Would this person tell me what I need to hear, or only what I want to hear? Sit with that for a moment. Think about the people closest to you right now. If you were making a mistake, a real one, the kind that corrodes your character over time, would they say something? Or would they stay quiet because they don't want to make it awkward? Would they risk the discomfort of honesty, or would they choose the ease of silence? Most people choose silence. Most people will watch you walk toward a cliff and say nothing because saying something might cost them the relationship. And here's the dark part. You probably do the same thing. You probably have people in your life right now who are slowly destroying themselves. Maybe with drink. Maybe with a toxic relationship. Maybe with a pattern of self-sabotage they refuse to name. And you say nothing. You watch. You might even enable it, because confronting it feels too expensive. But a real friend doesn't watch you walk toward the cliff. A real friend stands in front of you and tells you the truth. Not cruelly. Not with judgment. But with the kind of honesty that only comes from someone who genuinely wants you to be better. Seneca said it clearly. He said you should be the kind of friend who deserves trust. And that means being willing to correct a friend's faults gently but honestly. Not behind their back. Not in your own head. To their face, with care. How many of your friendships could survive that? How many of your friends have you ever actually told the hard truth to? And how many have told it to you? This is where most people fail the test. They want friends who make them feel good. They don't want friends who make them better. And those are almost never the same person. So here's the first thing you need to do if you want real friendships in your life. You need to shrink your circle. Deliberately. On purpose. Not because you're angry at people. Not because you're bitter. Because you understand that depth requires focus. You cannot be a real friend to 20 people. You can barely be a real friend to 5. And if you try, you'll end up being a shallow friend to all of them. You'll be the person who's always available but never truly present. The person who shows up but isn't really there. And people can feel that. They feel it even if they never say it. They feel that you're performing friendship instead of living it. So shrink the circle. Look at the people in your life and ask yourself one question. Not who do I enjoy spending time with? Not who makes me laugh. But who makes me better? Whose presence in my life actually elevates my character? Who do I admire? Not who do I tolerate? Who do I genuinely admire? Because the Stoics understood something that modern culture has completely forgotten. The people you spend time with shape who you become. This isn't a metaphor. It's a mechanism. You absorb the values, the habits, the speech patterns, the anxieties, the ambitions of the people closest to you. You become like them. Slowly. Imperceptibly. Over years. So if your circle is full of complainers, you'll become a complainer. If your circle is full of people who avoid hard conversations, you'll learn to avoid them too. If your circle is full of people who chase comfort and call it happiness, you'll start to believe that comfort is the goal. And you'll wonder why your life feels small. Marcus Aurelius knew this. He was the most powerful man in the world, surrounded by courtiers and advisors and generals, and he still reminded himself every morning that he would encounter difficult, petty, small-minded people that day. Not to be angry at them. To be prepared. To choose his engagements carefully. The Stoic social strategy was never withdrawal from the world. It was selective engagement. Being in the world but not being shaped by its worst impulses. Choosing your inner circle with the same care you'd choose anything that would determine the trajectory of your life. Because it will. Now. Here's the part that most people skip, and it's the part that matters most. You cannot have real friendship until you can be alone. This is the thing nobody tells you. The capacity for deep friendship actually requires the capacity for solitude. Not loneliness. Solitude. There's a difference. Loneliness is the pain of wanting company and not having it. Solitude is the strength of being enough in your own presence that you don't need company to feel whole. And until you can sit with yourself, until you can be alone without reaching for your phone, without turning on the TV, without texting someone just to fill the silence, you will keep choosing people out of desperation instead of choice. And people chosen out of desperation are never real friends. They're painkillers. Think about what that means. If you need someone to not feel empty, then you're not choosing them. You're using them. And they can feel it. Even if they can't name it, they can feel that your interest in them is really an interest in not being alone. And that corrupts the friendship from the inside. It makes the bond conditional. Conditional on them continuing to fill the void. And the moment they can't, or won't, the relationship collapses. Epictetus understood this. He said that to be a friend to others, you must first be a friend to yourself. And he didn't mean bubble baths and self-care. He meant that you must have ordered your own soul. You must have done the work of facing yourself, of sitting with your own thoughts, of understanding your own fears and desires without running from them. Because a person who hasn't done that work will always be looking outward for someone to do it for them. And no one can. No one can give you the relationship with yourself that you refuse to have. This is why so many friendships feel hollow. Not because the people are bad. Not because no one cares. But because both people in the friendship are secretly using the other to avoid themselves. And two people using each other is not friendship. It's codependence with better marketing. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If you want real friends, you have to become someone who doesn't need them. Not someone who doesn't want them. Someone who doesn't need them. Someone who can be complete in solitude and still choose to share their life with another person. Not because they have to. Because they want to. That's the only foundation on which real friendship can be built. Because only from that foundation can you choose someone freely. Only from that place can you say, I don't need you to be anything for me. I just want you to be here. And that kind of choosing, that kind of freedom, is what makes a friendship real. Everything else is exchange. Let me say that again because it's the heart of everything. You can't choose someone freely until you don't need them desperately. Say it to yourself. Let it land. You can't choose someone freely until you don't need them desperately. Most people live their entire social lives in violation of this principle. They build friendships on need. Need for validation. Need for entertainment. Need for someone to make them feel less invisible. And then they wonder why those friendships feel thin. Why they feel replaceable. Why, when they really need someone, no one shows up. Because the bond was never about them. It was about the function they served. And functions can be served by anyone. That's why you feel replaceable. Because in a transactional friendship, you are replaceable. You're a role, not a person. You're the funny one, or the reliable one, or the one who always plans things, or the one who listens. And as long as you perform the role, the friendship continues. But the moment you stop performing, the moment you need something yourself, the moment you're not the one giving, the dynamic breaks. And you discover that what you thought was friendship was just a long-running exchange. So how do you fix this? How do you build real friendships? Let me give you concrete steps. Not platitudes. Practices. First, learn to be alone. Not for an afternoon. Not as a break between social plans. Learn to be alone. For real. Turn off the phone. Sit with yourself. Face the silence. Face whatever comes up when there's no one to distract you from it. This is not punishment. This is preparation. Because the person who can be alone is the only person who can truly be with someone else. Everyone else is just performing company. Second, audit your circle. Look at every person you spend meaningful time with and ask yourself 3 questions. Does this person make me better? Can I tell this person the truth? Would this person stand by me if I had nothing to offer them? If the answer to any of those questions is no, you're not looking at a friendship. You're looking at a habit. And habits can be broken. Third, stop initiating with everyone. I know this sounds harsh, but hear me out. If a friendship only exists because you maintain it, it's not a friendship. It's a one-way investment. Pull back. Not dramatically. Not cruelly. Just stop carrying the weight alone. See who picks up their end. See who reaches out when you go quiet. The people who come looking for you when you disappear, those are your real friends. The ones who don't even notice you're gone were never really there. Fourth, invest depth, not breadth. Pick 2 or 3 people. Maybe 4. And go deep. Tell them things you've never told anyone. Ask them questions you're afraid to ask. Be present when they speak in a way that makes them feel truly heard. Share your fears, not just your highlights. Real friendship is built in the dark places, not the bright ones. It's built in the conversations that feel risky, the moments of vulnerability that could be rejected, the times you show someone the parts of yourself you usually hide. That's where the bond forms. Not over drinks. Not over memes. Over truth. Fifth, be the friend you want to have. This sounds simple, but it's the hardest one. If you want a friend who tells you the truth, start telling the truth. If you want a friend who shows up when things fall apart, start showing up. If you want a friend who stands by you in adversity, stand by someone in theirs. Because friendship is not a thing you receive. It's a thing you practice. It's a daily act of choosing someone, of investing in them, of being reliable when reliability costs you something. And most people won't do it. Most people will keep scrolling, keep collecting, keep confusing contacts for friends and followers for family. But you don't have to. Here's what I want you to understand. The loneliness you feel isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something's right. It's your soul telling you that the connections you have aren't real, and that you know the difference. You feel the hollowness of transactional relationships because you were built for something deeper. The ache isn't the problem. The arrangements you've been calling friendships are the problem. And the moment you stop pretending they're enough, the moment you acknowledge that you want real connection and not just noise, that's the moment everything begins to change. Because that's the moment you stop accepting substitutes. That's the moment you start being honest. With yourself first. And then with others. And honesty, real honesty, is the soil where friendship grows. Not the easy honesty. Not the kind that costs nothing. The hard kind. The kind that makes your throat tighten before you speak. The kind that risks rejection. The kind that says, I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure you'll still want to be around me after I say it. That's the honesty Seneca was talking about when he said to share your thoughts freely with a true friend, hiding nothing. Hiding nothing. Not the polished version of yourself. Not the curated version. The real one. With all its cracks and contradictions and fears. Because only the real you can be really loved. The performance can be liked. The performance can be entertained. But only the real you can be known. And friendship is, at its core, the experience of being known. Truly known. Not the highlight reel. The whole thing. Including the parts you're ashamed of. Including the parts you've never shown anyone. A real friend sees all of it and stays. Not because they have to. Because they choose to. Because they've decided that you, the actual you, are worth staying for. And you will never find that kind of friendship by being pleasant. You will never find it by being useful. You will never find it by being the person everyone likes but no one knows. You find it by being real. By being willing to be seen. By being willing to see someone else. And by being willing to stand in the discomfort of that seeing without flinching. Now let me bring this back to where we started. You woke up this morning to notifications that meant nothing. To a phone full of names that don't know you. To a life that looks connected from the outside and feels hollow from the inside. And I told you that the costly mistake most people make is thinking friendship is something that happens to you, something you find, when in fact it's something you build. And you can't build it until you stop needing people to fill your emptiness. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not all at once. Not today. But starting today. Get quiet. Get honest. Get alone. Learn to sit with yourself until the silence stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a home. And from that home, from that place of sufficiency, reach out. Not to everyone. To the few. To the people who make you better. To the people who can handle your truth. To the people who would call you at 3 in the morning not because you asked them to but because they sensed, from miles away, that something was wrong. Those people exist. But you won't find them by performing. You won't find them by pretending. You'll find them by becoming the kind of person who attracts them. A person who is honest. A person who is loyal. A person who can be alone and still chooses not to be. A person who tells the truth even when it costs. A person who stands by others when standing is hard. Become that person. And the right people will find you. Not because you hunted for them. Because you built yourself into someone they could recognize. Real friendship isn't found. It's built. And it starts with building yourself into someone who doesn't need it but chooses it anyway. You can't choose someone freely until you don't need them desperately. Remember that. Build from there. Stay disciplined.